I'm Susan Wright Simpson, and I'm here with Cecil Wildman. We are at the OSU Alumni Center, and it is October 20th, 2006, and this project is O State Stories, an oral history project of the OSU Library. Well, Cecil, tell me what years you were here at OSU.
I was here from 1955 to 59.
Okay, so you started, your entire college experience was here at OSU.
Yes.
And what brought you to OSU?
Well, my degree's in civil engineering. At that time, 90% of all the civil engineers in Oklahoma were OSU grads.
Mm-hmm.
And there was lots of little things happen about that time. I was just got out of the Army, and in the 50s, half the classes were military. And we were all Korean War veterans. And the World War II veterans had kind of set stage for us to draw the GI Bill and go to school. And I was actually given a blood transfusion in the Shattuck Hospital. And the head of the housing at Oklahoma State, it was his brother. So he asked me to come over and buy my lunch the following week. I came over and they took me over to school of civil engineering and interviewed me, gave me a, what do you call it, advisor, and went from there. It was a very easy transformation for me to come over here.
So you
And he gave me a nice room in Cordell Hall.
I'm sorry. Ready. So you went in for a blood transfusion and you got a path to college.
And in effect, we were sitting out in the hall waiting to give his brother a blood transfusion. He asked me what I was getting ready to do, and I told him I was thinking about enrolling in college. And I just got out of the Army, and he said, "Why don't you come over and let me show you around?" And he was a nice guy. His name was Mr. Thomas, and he was here all the time I was, but he also was head of Cordell Hall. Gave me a really nice room at Cordell.
Now you grew up in the Woodward Visite area.
Yes.
And so moving to Stillwater wasn't a big change for you.
It wasn't a big change, except I didn't know anybody in town, which that's not too unusual.
Yeah. How old were you when you started?
Let's see, I was in my 20s, got out of the Army, and I was 24.
You were 24.
Yeah.
Was that about the age of many of the students there, or were you a little bit older?
I was older. The high school students, of course, were 18 in those classes, but most of the GIs were a little younger than I was.
Okay.
Most of them were 20 to 21.
And was the vet village still being used at that time?
That village was very interesting. It was a bunch of cracker box, I call them houses, but it was really kind of an old barracks. They weren't insulated. The heat ran all the time, and they weren't air conditioned. It wasn't the greatest place, but they had their own governing body up there. They had their own basketball team, and they represented the college. When they came to the college for something, they came as a council. There was a pretty strong entity. They were all veterans, and it was cheap to stay up there cheap.
Right.
And as far as I know, they was all married.
Yeah. And did you live in a dorm?
I lived in Cordell Hall 1 year, and then I moved into an apartment.
What was it like living in Cordell Hall
You
at
know,
that time?
it was a perfect thing to start the college, especially at GI. Because if you need to know anything, you can find somebody over there. And it was handy to get to all the classes. And interesting thing about it, they had a class for returning GIs, math class. And the math class started out with 1 + 1 and ended up with heavy algebra. And it didn't count toward engineering, but it really gave you a chance to get your feet on the ground. Down at Oklahoma University, I checked, and they didn't have that class.
Yeah.
So I went from that directly in and made A's in trig and algebra from that class. That was a GI return class.
Now, what got you interested in civil engineering? Why was that?
I had worked for the federal government in Woodward as in the production marketing administration. And then I was in a aero photo engineering outfit in the Army.
So how long had you been out of the Army when you were enrolled?
About a year and a half.
About a year and a half. So you had a little bit of time to readjust. before you?
Well, I got discharged the last of January, and I couldn't get into school until the following year. Had a pretty darn good job, so I just delayed it until I got a car paid for and had a little bit of money.
Tell me what campus looked like at that time. What the buildings looked like, what the people looked like. Was it much different than what we see today?
I don't think so. It was beautiful, and the student union had just been built.
Mm-hmm.
The girls wore dresses or skirts and blouses. Pantsuits were not allowed. They also had a discussion at the college of whether the boys could wear jeans, and they finally decided it was okay with a nice shirt because I had so many guys working at the beef barn and what have you, so that was allowed. But they still were fairly well, that's fairly well dressed. So wore sports shirts.
What orange and black, were those the colors then?
Yes, absolutely.
And were people wearing orange like they are today? Was there a lot of school spirit?
Yeah, there was, but I don't know. At the football games, I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
I think that got a little bit stronger as the year goes by, more students, because Oklahoma State is about half the size as it is today.
Yeah. Well, speaking of football games, it's homecoming this week, and how many homecoming games do you think you've been to in your life, Cecil?
Well, I've had season tickets since 1955.
Wow.
So how many years would that be? 50?
51?
Yeah. I was telling someone the other day that kind of surprised them. I've had season tickets since 1955 to 4 sports.
Wow.
Basketball, wrestling, football, and baseball.
Wrestling?
Wrestling, yeah. My colleague's roommate was a wrestler from Perry.
Wow.
So he insisted that I go to all of the wrestling matches.
And what was the sport that was really big when you were here?
When I was here, probably basketball. However, in 1959, Oklahoma State won the National Baseball Championship.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew all the players, but the basketball, had I mentioned earlier about the odd and even tickets?
Tell me about that. It's hard to get into the games.
When you enrolled in school, you had to make a decision. You could only see half the basketball games because Gallagher Hall was sold out. So Mr. Wright decided it'd be half the students could go. So you made a big deal whether you got the odd or the even ticket. And then when you got that ticket, you looked up someone somewhere in town that didn't go to basketball games and talked about that ticket. So you could see all of them.
So you could see.
Since we're on basketball, I'd like to tell a little story.
Okay.
When they played Kansas here, and Wilt Chamberlain was in Kansas, you hear Eddie Sutton talk about this quite often at the ball games today. It was sold completely out, the game was. And they sold about 10,000 tickets at the school auditorium for people to sit on large screen. And they claim if everybody in the world says they went to that game, there'd have been 50,000 people. But I was actually there. And there was a reason behind all stories. I was in school civil engineering, and the professor, the hardest course you could take, and they were only going to pass about a third of the students, was statics. So the professor said, I don't want anyone going to that basketball game. You're going to have a hard test tomorrow that will determine whether you pass or not. Well, here's the hardest course on the campus, and he's going to give a test the next morning. Well, I made the decision that in the rest of my life I'd see Wilt Chamberlain play, but I probably wouldn't remember that test. So my roommate did not go to the game and gave me his ticket. You just couldn't get in. So 4 of us went. It was all in school of engineering. And so when the game was over, I tore home to study for this test the next morning. Dr. Wilhelm, the president of the college, called a holiday, and none of the professors could give a test the next day. So the professor that gave was very upset about that. He had to give us another week to study for that test.
How'd you do on the test?
I don't remember, and I knew I wouldn't. But we were talking about that at the coffee shop some more. Several people remember that he decided, I think about midnight, to call a holiday the next day.
Mm-hmm.
And here, all these guys that stayed home to study for that test.
They missed out.
But that was rather interesting. Mel Wright made the winning goal for that game against Kansas. And if you talk to people in coffee shops today, they will tell you they were there, and everyone in the world made that shot. Mel Wright did. I went to a football game with him about a month ago, and was talking to him. His grandsons were playing on the Stillwater High team, but he made the shot, and I was there. But
Okay.
Eddie Sutton's right. If you listen to people talk, they weren't at the game, but it's very. But they beat Kansas, and Will Chamberlain played here at that time.
Well, now we have it officially.
They won it, and a lot of people talk about the fact, but a lot of people didn't realize that these professors had scheduled these tough tests the next day.
So, what were homecoming festivities like then? Did
I think
we have the floats and the parades?
I think the difference was that there was lots and lots of floats,
Mm-hmm.
and there was lots of house decorations. Now, tomorrow, we'll see about 3 floats, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
It used to just be solid floats, and they'd come all the way out to the football stadium, and they'd go around the stadium during the half, and it was quite a deal. But of course, they're smaller, but they were heavy on floats and heavy on the walk around, more so than today.
Did the Greek houses decorate?
Yes.
They did. And you weren't ever in a fraternity,
No,
were you?
no. Most of the GIs were not.
Right.
That just wasn't done.
Did you also have a job while you were in college?
No. I worked for the federal government, the Soil Conservation Service at that time as a student in the summer.
Mm-hmm.
So the day school started, I went off the payroll. The day it was out, I went on the payroll. So I never really had to. I was on the GI bid.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I didn't want to have the job.
Yeah, well, civil engineering is such a hard subject area that I imagine you studied quite
You
a bit.
didn't have a big social life.
No? What about on weekends? What'd you do then?
Well, not really. Even on weekends, we studied a lot. We used to make the statement, this is a boring story, but we would study on Friday nights and get our homework done, and we'd all go out, the group I ran around with, would go to there was a Sonic Drive here, that we'd eat hamburger on Sunday afternoon, and there was a guy out here in the north end of Stillwater, had a 9-inch black and white TV. And we'd go watch Maverick every Sunday evening, about 10 of us. It was the only time all week long we saw TV. But that's okay. Okay, we enjoyed it.
So that was your big excitement, watching Maverick.
For a week, yeah.
For a weekend.
I'd like to remind you all that if you don't realize this, they didn't have fall and spring breaks.
Oh.
And they had some real tough math teachers. And the math teachers were so tough, and I'll tell a story about one of them that everybody knows my age. They didn't list the math instructors in the catalog because no one would schedule the tough ones. And so they decided, in addition to that, all the engineers had to take math on Saturday to keep them in school. And I'll tell a story that everybody knows about that was here in the 50s. They had a professor here when I showed up. His name was Square Root Smith. And the reason that, if you've never heard of him, all the people here in the 50s did. He had a math class before I got here of 64 students, and he passed 8. So he passed the square root of his class.
Cool.
So you couldn't, if you drew him, you couldn't really drop him. You probably wasn't going to pass, but still, if you dropped him, it was on a GI Bill that put you a semester behind. So it was really kind of a tough deal I drew for analytical geometry and calculus. There were 60 students, I think, the first day. 30 of them dropped it. Roughly, it was 15 showed up for the finals. He gave 1 B. He passed about 11 of us. And one of the astronauts was in that class, and he got the only B. But I actually made a C in that course, and I actually passed it. They had a big article in the Daily Oklahoma when he retired about that, and they couldn't understand why the college kept him around.
And all the students knew him as Square Root Smith?
Because he passed the square root of his class.
Passed
it. He passed about 11 of us.
Yeah.
And he gave 1 B and about 5 or 6 C's and 2 or 3 D's and the rest were F's. 15, I think, showed up for the final.
Sounds like classes were tougher then than they are today.
Well, they didn't get very good grades. They told all the engineering students, and you have to realize if anyone was here in the 50s and was an engineering student, he was going to be offered lots of jobs.
Mm-hmm.
NASA was hiring, I think, 17,000. All the aircraft companies used, all of those were. Most of the engineers were mechanical with an aeronautical option, and there's literally guaranteed a job. So for some reason, it seems as though the instructors, they would tell you when you go into a class, we're only going to pass 1 out of 3. And they would tell you that in class after class after class. And they claim the reason for that is why take all those courses, those math courses, then get to be a junior and flunk.
Mm-hmm.
Then you've lost all of it. So it was, some of the instructors would, before a final exam, you go sit down to take it. They'd say, okay, I'm going to pass 1 out of 3. Take it or leave it. So they didn't get very good grades either.
Wow.
I personally made the highest grade in an advanced chemistry class in the chemistry department, and I got a C. So they didn't, and they told us when we graduated, they said, well, now if you put up with all this stuff we gave you, anyone that hires you is pretty much convinced you'll stay 4 years. I got off subject there. That's not a lot about Oklahoma State, but
no, but that's interesting. And I think that because you came in after the Army and you were a little older,
yeah,
you were maybe a little better prepared for that situation.
Well, you learn that we all had the engineers that I ran around with, and they were all engineers. We had pretty much a set thing. When we came out of class, we immediately started doing homework in the evening. Then we'd take about an hour break, and then personally, I studied till about midnight, and then I quit.
Mm-hmm.
I never did study past midnight. A lot of them stay up pretty late. But that's okay. They were top-notch students, and they all became very, very successful.
I want to ask you something while we're on the subject. You work with a lot, or have been working in your career with a lot of younger engineers.
Yes.
Do you think they're coming out of school as prepared or as disciplined as they did at your time?
I think they're a lot smarter than we are, and I think that they, as far as the computers and the bookwork stuff, they're better. And I'm with a consulting engineering firm in Oklahoma City, and our young engineers are not any good going out in the public much.
Mm-hmm.
And they broke in while I was here. Dr. Wildman said we had to have a major in English courses, and so we had to have 20 hours of humanities and English.
Mm-hmm. They
quit that, and now the young engineers in our office have trouble writing, and we don't even take them out with us to meet with communities. They're not very good, but they're twice as smart as we are.
Yeah.
But I don't think they're disciplined. I think they think, well, if they lose a job, they go get another one.
Yeah.
Which it really isn't true.
Were you recruited when you were graduating?
I interviewed, I think, 10 different people and was offered 10 jobs.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, but all the other engineers were too. There wasn't anything special about it.
And what was the job you took?
I went to work as a plant engineer for the Soil Conservation Service.
Okay.
Really liked it. Went to Oklahoma City.
Okay. So
didn't stay too long with them, but
when did you move back to Stillwater?
64.
In 64, and you've been here
State
ever
engineer
since.
for the Farmers Home. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, since you've pretty much lived in Stillwater for 50 years, I wonder what you think about how the town, how the university has grown. Is this college town different than the college town it was when you were here?
I think so. Stillwater was kind of classified as a rural farm community when I went to school there. And the old old ranchers and farmers, and they kind of controlled the downtown. And I think that they became more sophisticated over the years, and Stillwater kind of became a little bit more of a larger, has a little bit of metropolitan stuff to it.
Mm-hmm.
And the college has doubled, and Stillwater has tripled in size. And I don't think you have the animosity downtown as you had back in the 50s.
Right.
A lot of the people are born and reared here and had old businesses. A lot of them didn't particularly like the college. They kind of thought, well, we'd be better off just having an old town Stillwater.
Right.
Be the size of Perkins.
Right. Well, what do you think about the controversy in the past year or two over the athletic village expansion. Is that going to be good for the city and the campus?
Personally, I think so, and I think that most of the engineers and the people I talk to in Oklahoma City think it's a great thing. You hear a few people gripe and groan about it, but I think most of them think it's a great thing.
Yeah.
The engineers in our office are engineers for Walmart, and we're the engineers on the new Walmart store here. And they think that all that'll do just enhance everything. I do too. I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. Do you think it was handled appropriately?
Well, they might have, from what I can tell, I hear people complain that they might have gone out and talked to everybody a little bit nicer from the beginning and kind of approached it a little bit better, but I think in the long run,
right.
If I talk to 100 people about it all over the state, there might be 10 gripe and groan a little bit about it, the other 90 will like it.
Yeah.
I just don't see, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah.
I made a comment that I have the club seats now, the football seats, and I said, well, the reason I did that, Boone Pickens could afford to put that much money in. I can surely afford to buy those club seats. And I think he spurs other people doing that.
Sure. So, tell me about the people. Did you mostly hang out with your other GIs?
Yes. My last college roommate, though, was from Perry, and he hadn't been in the Army, and the draft was still on there. Just because we got out of the Army, the draft was still on.
Right.
And they were going to draft those guys since they got out of school. He was drafted. He was from Perry. He was a wrestler, and he and I were both civil engineers, so we roomed together last year. And he got drafted and went to Alaska, of all places. And then another one that was real sharp from Ponca City, he became an engineer in Saudi Arabia.
Wow.
But the one I mentioned, my roommate, he became the base engineer for Altus Air Force Base.
And you have stayed in touch with these people?
Yeah, we stayed in touch. There for a while, the engineers, and you might find this interesting, from the classes of 55, 6, 7, 8, 9, met once a year in Oklahoma City and had a big steak dinner. Neil McCaleb is one of the ones that was in. We're all buddies. You know, if you go to school like at Oklahoma State, there's not very big classes. In my graduating class of civil engineers, by the time we got down to probably about 20.
Wow.
Well, we're all buddies. We've been buddies ever since we
Yeah.
got out of school. We drank coffee together. I've been pallbearer at some of their funerals and been to some of their weddings, and we're all still very close friends. We used to always meet at homecoming. They have civil engineering luncheon, I guess y'all know, tomorrow. And I've never missed one of those. I may tomorrow because of the parking situation. Club seats are on the north side, and I'll have to going to have to come through with the engineering school to go back over there and lead in. But they still have get together. Yeah. That's I would think that would be common. And especially the engineer. Now, let me tell you a little bit of story about that. There's 10 OU grads in our office in Oklahoma City, civil engineering grads. They don't even go to the football games together and don't even speak on homecoming. They don't like each other, I don't think. I mean, it's kind of an interesting thing that they do not socialize.
Right.
And if I was in the office today, we would be discussing if we was going to meet up at the luncheon tomorrow.
Yeah.
All the OSU engineers.
Right.
And we'd probably all show up. But if they're having homecoming at OU, I think tomorrow, and they won't even get together and discuss it.
I wonder how much of that is generational, because I don't think people my age have those lifelong friendships as much.
Well, we were all in the same boat. We were all on the GI Bill, didn't have any money, and going to school and studying, and it just. But when you get out in the cold, cruel world, these guys all been in a consulting business or went somewhere. We'll all end up working together.
Yeah.
I was a state engineer one time for 20 years for the FHA here in Stillwater. I had an engineer's seminar, and I invited 91 consulting engineers to the seminar. 89 of them were Oklahoma State grads.
Wow.
There was one from MIT and one from OU. So I don't think that they had well, just different. A lot of those guys live in Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
And they commute. And here you're stuck in Stillwater. When I was in school, you had to live here.
Right.
You couldn't live anywhere else in school. I think that's the reason Oklahoma State people are friendlier. We were all stuck here. I mean, you can't commute to Oklahoma State from Tulsa or Edmond. It's too far. And we were all lived here, and we're stuck here where the Oklahoma City people lived all over Oklahoma City, Norman, Moore, and they weren't on the campus. Here, you're pretty much stuck on the campus, if you live, which I think's great.
Did you have a car?
Yes.
Did. What car?
Of course, I was old enough to have a car, but everyone has the same type car. I had a '52 Ford. The day I graduated, had 147,000 miles on it.
Wow.
But isn't that common for a college student?
You got out of Stillwater occasionally then.
I went out home. Yeah, I went back out home pretty often. And then I worked in the summer. Drove in the summertime.
Do you remember the tone of what it was like on campus when the name was changed from A&M to OSU?
It didn't seem to me like that was a big deal. I went 2 years, I believe, at Oklahoma A&M. And as an English class, when they got to talk, everyone was real pleased that was changed. I thought it was a great idea, and everybody else that I knew thought it was a great idea.
Why?
Well, it just seemed like it was a university, and since in the old days you had a lot of agriculture students here, and when I was in school, by far the largest class was mechanical engineers, by far, with an aeronautical option, and they pretty much controlled the school. And why would you have an agriculture mechanical title when you could go to a university?
Right.
When most of the students were not agriculture majors, even though that's great, and the agriculture schools here are great. But it just seemed to me like, at the time, everyone I knew was pleased.
Right.
And I think I was a sophomore when they changed it. I'm not sure about that.
So your diploma says OSU.
My diploma says Oklahoma State, yes.
Okay.
But the English professors used to require us to spell Oklahoma Agriculture Mechanical College every morning before class started. And they said, we don't want you graduating from here and can't spell the name of the college as you graduate. And it was kind of tough at first, everybody spelling that sucker out.
That's a long thing to spell. Well, just tell me some more of your recollections. What are some other things that you remember?
Well, as I mentioned before, the two guys were about half the classes. Some of the professors, I like to talk about, everyone talks about them, Square Root Smith. The Kansas basketball game was very interesting because of the fact people still talk about it.
Yeah.
And I think I remember that the total cost for room and board at Cordell Hall was $60.
For a year?
For a semester.
Oh, wow.
No, wait, that's not true. $60 a month.
A month?
Yeah, $60 a month.
For Cordell.
And I think after the first semester, it went to $66. But that's pretty cheap. That's room and board.
Wow.
Per month.
So
and they had 3 good meals.
That was with your food.
That's with your food, yes.
And how much was coffee at the White House?
We was talking about that this morning. I had drank coffee with 2 1957 grads this morning. They said they thought it might have been 20 cents. I don't think it was over a quarter. I doubt it was a quarter. That's pretty cheap. Might have been a dime. I'm not sure.
What do you pay today for coffee?
Well, I think over there we drank coffee over at Red Rock, and I think it's 70-something cents, but we give a buck. We just throw $1 down.
It's still a bargain.
Still $1 a cup over there. And everybody gives a tip. I think it's about what it is. I'm not sure. I was going to say the notes that I took was about Pistol Pete. I'm just paused.
Tell me about Pistol Pete. You were there for the unveiling of the mascot.
We were at a homecoming football game. I'm almost positive it was 1958. And Oklahoma State had a real good football team, and they was playing the Air Force Academy. And the Air Force Academy, I think, was undefeated, 2 of the top teams in the nation. Now, Oklahoma State went to a bowl game that year, went to the Bluegrass Bowl. Well, about, I think it was at the half, here comes this crazy Pistol Pete guy out on the middle of the field, and nobody knew what it was or who it was and why. It was a secret. And it took us a while for that to soak in. That was old Frank Eaton, because he wrote in all the parades prior to that. And that's the unveiling of Pistol Pete as we see him today.
Oh, okay.
And
Great.
it was quite a surprise.
Did the students liked it?
Yeah, they was kind of shocked. Really, you kind of looked out there and think, what is that fool coming out here with that big old, and you could tell it looked like Frank Eaton. But it was a total surprise, as far as I know, to everybody.
Yeah.
That happened just about the time Oklahoma State went from Oklahoma Mechanical, agriculture mechanical, to Oklahoma State University, about the time when that's when they quit calling teams Aggies, and pretty much went to Cowboys, all about that same time. And everybody was pleased with that,
Yeah.
with the Cowboy nickname. And I think other colleges have used, Wyoming, I think, uses the same. I'm not sure they don't even use him. I think that's good that you have a mascot like that.
Well, was school spirit in the 50s like it was today?
I think so. That is good. You literally, at those basketball games, there's no change. You can, if you went with someone, you couldn't talk to them. Just like today, you can't talk to whoever you go to the ball game with. Too much noise. That's the first time in my life I ever went anywhere that solid noise that you couldn't even talk to anybody. There's the same thing. And the football games were full. That was, like I said, I had a national championship baseball team that year in '59, which was good. So it was a good. And the wrestling team was national champions, and just like they are now.
Yeah.
They were national champions in '59.
So the white hut, was it a hut, literally?
It was a little hut-looking thing that was very small, probably 40 feet long and 20 feet wide. Had booths on both sides. And from what I can remember, what people remind me, the guy that ran it was blind. And had snacks in there. But it was primarily a coffee drinking place. It was right east of the student union, between there and what would be the business school. And people would come out of the classroom building. Instead of going to the student union, they would stop in the White Hut. There's another thing that we all talk about after the years. When you freshmen, sophomores, and juniors, you studied all the time. By the time we were seniors, we all learned to take a 10-minute break and didn't schedule anything. I mean, a 1-hour break. We didn't schedule a class from 10 to 11 our senior year and go to student union and drink coffee. Never did do that the first 3 years. But we got to be seniors, got a little bit wise about that thing.
Yeah. So did the White Hut get torn down eventually?
I'm going to guess, and there's some people that know, but I was thinking he probably got real poor health, and it probably lasted another 4 or 5 years after that. And of course, with the expansion, they probably let him get poor health before they bought him out and closed it. It was probably an old coffee shop years before that.
Sure. Now, did the women and the men both go there for coffee?
Yeah, and professors.
Professors.
It's real common for a professor to teach a class and go there and drink a cup of coffee because it's handy.
Yeah.
Just walk out. You don't have to go to student union and stand in line or anything. There was probably 6 booths on each side.
Were there any women in your major?
No, I was going to mention that earlier. I never had an engineering class, a physics class, a math class that had a woman in it.
Why do you think that is?
Well, no, there wasn't near as many women then in school. I did take one class over that I had to take geography, and most of the athletes were in that class, and there's about half women. But at the engineers ball, the year I graduated, there were 3 women came in and sat at the table with us at the dance at an engineers ball. They still do, I'm sure, on St. Patrick's Day, and they were mechanical engineers. And I'd never had classes with them at all. It was very attractive, and I'm sure they got great jobs. I never, in any of my statics, physics, strength material, senior classes didn't have a woman in it.
Yeah.
I think there's probably as many women now as there is men.
What about black students? Were there?
I think there was about 2 in the whole school. There wasn't any black basketball players, and I'm sure there weren't any black football players. That came on in the 60s.
Right.
But I think there was a couple students here.
Yeah. Do you remember that being a big deal?
Well, just no one even paid attention to it. They never even thought about it one way or the other.
Right. Well, what advice do you have for students today, whether they're going into engineering or anything else?
Well, one thing that you talk about in the coffee shops in Oklahoma City, and even the governor's water conferences and what have you, there's an awful lot of students that enroll in school up here today just to get into school, and they graduate and they don't take anything, and they got a degree on the wall and they can't get a job. We kind of think maybe talking, why don't more of them take some of the sciences? Because there's still a tremendous job openings for all of those. That's one thing that I guess you just can't help. But we kind of wonder around the coffee shops. So many students get a degree, they don't know what they're going to do. And I think an awful lot of the students today, their high school teachers are the role models. So they come over here and other colleges, and they're going to be teachers. And then generally the teachers aren't the highest paid people in the world, and we kind of feel like maybe, that's not their fault.
Right.
But
so more math and science should be stressed.
I think
in the high
it's still
school.
a tremendous opening for anyone that goes into the science.
Sure.
I don't think people, if you come over here, I know a lot of students came over and took engineering after the first year and quit. If you're going to study every night, you don't have any business in there if you're not going to do it. I always told my daughter Wendy the day she started, it's going to take more guts than his brains to get through that college.
Yeah.
And I think that's true.
Yeah.
Just bow your neck and study and be okay.
Yeah.
I think the students are smarter than we were by far.
What other family members have gone to OSU?
Well, Joy has, and Wendy.
And I went for 1 year.
And I think that I told Chelsea, with my granddaughter, that she would probably fall right into that, because then Wendy was in a sorority. She'll be asking the same sorority, won't she? I assume.
Yeah.
And has a sense if she wants to be.
Yeah. Has she talked about coming here?
Yeah. So
See,
she insists on it.
How old is Chelsea now? She's 16, 17?
She'll be 17.
She's a junior.
Junior in high school.
So,
I talked to her about it quite a lot.
So you would be proud to have your third generation
Yeah, why not?
of your family.
Well, I think it's easy for a high school student in Stillwater to come right over here to college, because you're going to have about 10 or 15 of those in your class. And it's comfortable. There's nothing
Right.
going to get you really excited about going. Come from a small town, you're scared to death.
Uh-huh.
I've talked to students that said, no one talks to me, they don't take role in classes, and I'm just shocked. Well, Wendy and Joy weren't shocked at all. They just still running around the same ones that did in high school.
Yeah. Yeah. A little easier, not so much of a culture shock, I guess.
There's about from 5 to 10 OSU grads drank coffee over McHale's, and the girls that work in there are all college students. 2 or 3 of them graduate and don't have a clue what they're going to do. They've got a degree in their hand. They didn't take anything, and they're just kind of out looking for a job. Now, there's a couple went in the medical field and immediately went to work.
Do you advise young engineering students?
Absolutely. As a matter of fact, I think if you've got a degree in engineering tomorrow, you could even go to work for our company in Oklahoma City. I think it's that critical.
Really?
And they keep about 20. I think we're one of the top engineering firms in the state. They're designing 20 Walmart stores today in 5 states. And they really had trouble we have trouble finding a young student that will go out to a night meeting and stay in some town like Stillwater and meet the city council building a new Walmart store.
Mhm.
They say, I'm not gonna do that, my wife didn't want me to travel, and on and on and on. And so you have that,
Different work ethic, isn't
Yes.
it?
and it's really a problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're the engineers for 100 towns, and we have trouble getting any of the young engineers to go with us
Yeah.
because they didn't have to beat their brains out like we did. Seems like they folks paid their way through school and they'll do something else and whatever.
Yeah.
We just kind of feel like that they're smarter. There's no question that they're taking even nuclear physics and all that stuff that we didn't even take. But that's just the way of the world, and they'll probably all do great.
Well, I think we're about to wrap up. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
Well, another thing that's discussed with all college grads, and especially OSU grads,
Mhm.
is the fact that if you graduate from high school and you go into the workplace and then you take this guy and he goes through college, his income's going to be 10 times
Mhm.
what this guy that didn't go to college. Not just a few times, it's going to be 10 times.
It's $1
Well, he
million
would
over your lifetime.
Yes, what he would make by not going.
Mhm.
And we tell everybody that. I think you can increase that a little bit more if you take some tough courses and go into the sciences. The highest price engineers came out here with electrical engineers when we were in school. Probably still are.
Mhm.
And that's tough. And the chemical engineers. But we tell everybody at the office to come in there. I met with the Walmart president's kids in Oklahoma City about a month ago. The president of Spearman Academy Engineers is Tom McCaleb from Walmart. He's a Texas grad. He wanted me to meet with him
Mhm.
and tell him what to expect. And I told him, when you go to college, don't take physics, chemistry, math, calculus. Take history and English. Go into school slow where you pass and you kind of get a little bit of background behind you. And don't let some advisor just load you up. I've seen them load them up and they flunk the first year. Take it easy, get your feet on the ground, and then take very slowly go into your math and your sciences. And I told them, for God's sakes, go to a college that they like.
Mhm.
Don't go where your folks say you got to do this and you got to do that. Select your. I'm talking to the parents, but the kids are in the room. And it's in our conference, and none of them lived in Oklahoma. These are all Walmart people out of Arkansas mostly. And I told them, if the kids want to go to Arkansas University, fine. If they want to go to Missouri, fine. If they want to go to Harvard, fine. If that's where they want to go, they'll be better off. Initially, they might not like it when they come back home. But for God's sakes, don't let them take a whole bunch of tough math courses that first year. And I would tell anybody that.
Yeah.
And I said, and I know a guy that lived in Stillwater that went clear through to his senior year in college. A bank here in Stillwater offered him a loan officer's position if he got that degree. They didn't care. They had to have a piece of paper on the wall.
Mhm.
He got crossways with his girlfriend. He didn't show up and take his fines. He's working for a floor contractor in Texas. He got an F and all, and he was a senior. And he had a bank job offered him. So I tell him, for God's sake, get that degree and get it behind. But the people that I drank coffee are all OSU grads and they're all successful.
Mhm.
And there's one of them electrical engineer, one's a geologist, and one's,
Wow.
just different fields.
Yeah.
And I imagine you feel the same way when you walk across that stage. There's a good feeling. When you see
Yeah.
the stage,
Yeah.
that's a good feeling to have that old degree in your hip pocket.
Well, thank you very much.
All right. Enjoyed showing up today.
So you spend a lot of time in the library.
I spent some time in the library. One of the interesting courses I took was Oklahoma History and Political Science. and Dr. Leroy Fisher, who was the instructor here at Oklahoma State. And after each class, we took it Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, it's a 3-hour course, he required us to go to the library and read at least 30 pages. And then when we walked into the class, the next time we sat down with the blue book and we wrote what those 30 pages told us. So as a result of that, we spent a lot of time in the library, and it was real interesting stuff. I'll give you an example of one of the assignments he gave us was to write about when Churchill and Roosevelt met in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean and decided whether the United States would declare war on Germany with England. He assigned us that, and that went on for about 4 weeks. And we would have to write whether we felt like that England got us into the war or didn't get us into the war. So as a result of that, you had to spend a lot of time in the library. Another interesting story about it, and I was taking a graduate course in civil engineering in '59, and they had us design a dam over the Snake River in Washington State, and the water ran over the top of the dam. And so we were in the process of designing this dam, and we all got to thinking, wonder if there's ever been one designed before. So we go to the library, and sure enough, in New York State, they had built one like it. And we were all leaving out part of the central part of that dam. And that was the trick to it.
Mm-hmm.
The trick to it was that if you filled the thing full of water, you designed it for that, but what happened if it was empty? If it was empty, the dam would fall forward into the river because it didn't have any water. Over at the library, it had the plans and specs on that particular dam that we looked up in New York, and we would have never got the problem worked without that. It's amazing that we had worked this problem and it was wrong,
Mm-hmm.
because we never dreamed of designing the dam if there wasn't any water in the river.
Mm-hmm.
But now, Dr. Fisher was very strong and go to the library after every class. And you imagine reading all that stuff, how much you get out of it, because there's always different subjects.
The library was fairly new at that time?
Well, it must have been.
Yeah.
It was there, and it had to be new. The classroom building was new. I think it was only about 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know when it was built. I was in the Army then. Wasn't it about 51 or 52? But the classroom building?
53 for the library.
Yeah, well, see, this was just 2 years later.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a great place to go. We enjoyed it. I always liked going over there.
What did it look like? Do you remember?
Well, it's beautiful. I mean, just like it is today. And we went in on the first floor and had people sitting there helping you to find what you was looking for. Of course, we had to learn the system to find our own reference material and all that.
Yeah.
But we didn't study over there because, well, we was doing mostly problems, and it wasn't that type of stuff. We never studied over there at all. We had to get all that stuff out there and read it and
Mhm.
report on it. Yeah, I remember it was beautiful, and we enjoyed going over there. Of course, I lived in Cordell Hall, walked right by the thing every day. And it's, like I say, to me, it was wonderful. It probably still is, I would be my guess.
Oh, we'd love for you to
Yeah.
come back and visit anytime.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.